Hello.
Hello.
Perhaps you could tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yes. My name is Frances, and currently I'm a health and wellbeing advisor.
Oh,
Um, I was a personal trainer
yeah,
and decided that that didn't really work with my lifestyle.
right,
Before that, I was a school teacher, and that didn't work very well with my lifestyle either.
okay,
I have a little girl, she's called Molly, and she's 7.
right,
And what I really want from my career is to be able to get the balance right between time spent with Molly and progressing and developing my own career and my own pathway.
okay, okay. So that's the kind of agenda that you'd like to talk about, is it?
Yes, please.
Okay, okay. It's the first thing we're going to do is to establish some ground rules between us so that we know what we're talking about.
Okay.
And then after that, what we'll do is we'll work on a process which I'll talk to you about a little bit later.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So anything else before we start thinking about our ground rules?
I think that's it.
Okay. So what you've said to me is a number of things to do with your career and to do with your personal life and to do with your child.
Hmm.
Okay, you've had a number of career changes, you've told me. So the first thing to think about is the kinds of conversations that we're likely to be having.
Hmm.
So on one end of the scale, if I've got a scale here,
Yeah.
on one end of the scale, we could have a very open conversation where we're thinking about your personal stuff as well as your professional stuff.
Okay.
Or we could go right up the other end, a much more closed conversation, which is only focused on you and your work.
Okay.
And it's quite tightly closed on that area. Where do you think we're likely to go with that, and what would you feel comfortable with?
I think I'd probably like to start down this end about my personal life and the things in that
Right.
that could potentially lead on to the other end of the spectrum.
Okay, so you'd like a very open kind of conversation. Yes. Okay, and you're comfortable talking about yourself and your personal things as well.
Yes, I quite enjoy it.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, I'm okay with that as well.
Good.
That's fine. What I will say to you is if I start to feel uncomfortable, and I'm not saying I will, but
Yeah.
if I do, I'll let you know.
Okay.
And the same for you. If you feel we're going into areas and I've asked you something that you don't really want to respond to, do say so.
Okay.
Because that's part of our agreement.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah, no problem.
So that's okay, is it? So the next area that we need to talk about is to do with confidentiality.
Okay.
And we could think of it in terms of, again, a scale where at one end we have a very private conversation, which is just between us. Mm-hmm. On the other, it could be public, whereby anybody would know or could know what we talked about. So my question to you is where would you like that to be, and what does that mean for you?
I think at this moment in time, I'd like the conversation to be just between us, and the information that I give you to be just between us. But as we go through the process and we explore a few more things and talk a few more things, that might change as we go. Okay. So it's something that you would like to monitor? Yes. Okay. So who might need to know, and what is it they might need to know that we've talked about? I don't know. You don't know? No. You'll find out. Yeah. As we go through. We'll see when we get there. Okay. All right. So we're thinking about the private end. Okay. So we could say that our conversation is confidential. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I'd like to say to that is that confidentiality is not the same as keeping things secret. Yeah. Because secret sounds a bit unpleasant. Okay. Yeah. Confidentiality means there's a boundary. Okay. And there will be things that you will be bound to and things that I'm bound to. Okay. Right. So I'm part of a professional body and I'm bound by its ethical rules. And what that means is if you disclose something to me that's illegal, we would need to talk about that and what happens with that and what we do about that and where it might go. Or if there's something which kind of comes into the, perhaps there's a sort of moral issue here, we might have to refer that on to somebody else possibly. Or it could be that I might think that there's, I'm not saying that there is, but there might be something which might mean I refer you to somebody else. Okay. Because it goes beyond my limits of expertise. Okay.
So confidential, yes. If there is an issue which seems to cross over that, then we talk about it.
Of course.
And we see what we do about it.
Yes. And we'll see where the discussions go and which parties need to be informed at that time.
Yes.
If any.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And where I am is because of my professional membership, it's not a secret conversation. It is confidential, and there are things that may mean I will need to talk to you about who else we talk to about it.
No problem.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Thank you. So, the next thing to think about is to do with the administration and management of our relationship.
Okay.
So, on one hand, again, a scale, we could have formal things. So, we put dates in the diary in advance, we book a certain amount of time, we have a certain venue that we meet at.
Okay.
We make arrangements about how we contact each other in between sessions. So we call that formal.
Right.
And at the informal end, it would be, well, kind of anytime you fancy, you give me a phone call and we'll meet and we'll have a chat.
Right.
So where would you prefer to be? What would suit
I
you?
think in terms of my lifestyle, my commitments, it needs to be organised in advance. So
Right.
formal.
A more formal.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Right. So that would mean making agreements now about how often you think we would need to meet and for how long.
Okay. Is it similar to the other conversations that we've had that it can change as we go?
Yes.
So perhaps in the early days we look at, a couple of dates in advance, book that time in, discuss how we communicate in between, but then maybe after those appointments we might move to something slightly less formal.
Yes.
Would that work?
Yes,
Okay.
certainly. Okay. Inevitably, it's likely to change as time goes on anyway.
Right.
That's just kind of what happens. And one of the things that we will need to do is to review that regularly.
Okay. That was going to be my next question anyway, is that how long do these go on for? How long are we talking? But I suppose we don't know until we...
Okay, well, let's give some examples. Normally, we're talking about anything between an hour or an hour and a half discussion.
Okay.
Okay, give or take. What I would do is book 2 hours in my diary. Now,
right.
We might not use all that 2 hours, but I would book that amount of time. So I don't have to say, oh, sorry, time's up, out.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
That's important. Now, frequency is dependent on the issue.
Right.
Now, what I find from my experience is that sometimes in the early stages, you might want to meet more frequently. So some people I work with want to speak with me every 2 weeks in the initial stages.
Yeah.
But over time that changes, and then it becomes once a month, once every 6 weeks, once every 2 months. So it changes over time. So straight away, what would you think would be appropriate given the nature of what you've talked about?
I think initially once a fortnight would suit.
Okay.
And then see how we go from there. I think that there's a lot to talk about.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. And we'll see what happens after each appointment and then go from there.
Okay.
So would you suggest booking out 3 or 4 appointments in the beginning?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
We should put them in the diary.
Okay.
And then we all know where we are.
Okay.
See them coming up. Okay. The other thing to think about is contact in between sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm very happy to receive an email from you.
Okay.
I'll give you my email address.
Okay.
And then we can sort something out from there.
Right.
I'm not so happy about being telephoned.
Okay.
Because that may interrupt something else that I'm doing.
Okay.
But an email I find is much better.
And do they usually come from me wanting to contact you, or
yes.
Do you keep in touch with
I
me?
will not contact you in between sessions.
Right. Okay.
You contact me.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. No problem.
Okay. And what about if you need to change an appointment?
Well, I'd just email you, I think, and give you how much notice would you need?
Okay. Well, a day really.
Okay.
Okay, right. That's fine. Okay, that's good. So it's much more towards the formal end. What about where we would meet? I mean, we're actually meeting in my office at the moment. Is that a suitable place for you to meet?
Yeah, that's fine for me.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, where do you What other suggestions have you got?
Well, here.
Okay.
Sometimes I meet people in places to have coffee,
Okay.
like cafes or whatever.
Right.
It just varies, and people feel comfortable in different sorts of settings.
Okay. I think here's fine to start with.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's variable. People have different preferences about these things.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to initially meet every fortnight.
Yes, please.
We are going to book in the diary 2 hours at a time. We may not use all that time, but that's
it's
what
there if we need it.
We'll put it there if we need it.
Okay.
Contact in between sessions will be by email.
Yes.
And you email to me.
Okay.
If either of us need to change an appointment, 24
email.
hours notice, and we'll do it by email.
Okay.
And make that change. So that puts it kind of in the formal area. The other thing to think about is making notes.
Right.
Now, I can assure you that I never take notes.
Okay.
Because I listen.
Yes.
To what you have to say.
Okay, good.
Okay, but some people, in this sort of situation, do like to take notes.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. Do you want to take notes?
Yes, I think I would.
Okay.
Note taking is helpful for me.
Right, I'm perfectly happy for you to make notes.
Okay.
It's not a problem. Have you brought a notebook with you?
I have.
Yeah, okay, good. So that's fine. And what you do with that notebook is up to you, really.
Okay.
But I don't keep notes.
Right.
I remember.
Okay.
What you said.
Good.
Yeah.
Glad one of us does.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Okay. The other thing that we need to think about is activity.
Good at that.
So yes, it's kind of how active or passive we're going to be. Now, what I will assure you is I will be extremely engaged and active and committed to our sessions face to face.
Okay.
And there's very little I'll do in between sessions on your behalf.
Okay.
So I won't go and speak to your manager.
Right.
I won't see if I can fix something up for you unless that has been part of our agreement.
Okay.
Okay. But what I will guarantee to be is present and active and pay attention to you in the session.
Right.
Okay. What about you? What do you expect?
From you?
Well, from yourself as well as from me.
To be on time, to keep the appointment,
right.
To keep our agreements that we've got in place.
Right.
To discuss with you in the way that we've already discussed anything that needs changing, or to make sure that I keep that part of the agreement. Also, I think in sessions I need to kind of do the same things as you. I need to be active, I need to be present, I need to be engaged, and sometimes I can be a little bit unclear about what it is I'm trying to say, so trying to be clear in what it is we're discussing.
Okay.
And not vague.
Okay. So one expectation that I have of you is that as a result of our discussions, we will come to an understanding about what you might do about it.
Okay.
And so at the beginning of the next session, I will talk to you about what you've done.
Right.
And how you've progressed and where your thinking is, or what actions you've taken. So I have that expectation that you will do something.
Okay.
As a result of our conversations. Because, of course, if both of us start to think that the relationship's passive, it means there isn't one.
Right. Okay. Yes, of course.
Nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm very active here in this room with you, but more passive outside.
Okay.
I have an expectation of you that you'll be active in our discussions in the room, but also active outside as well.
Okay. You're not going to want to see my notebook and mark it or anything, are you?
No.
Okay, good.
I don't have a bag of gold stars.
Good. Okay.
Okay, that's good. Right, thank you. So we've got that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Cleared up. You're okay with that?
Absolutely fine.
Okay, fine. So the final one is to do with consistency.
Right.
And kind of honouring what we've said. Now we've kind of covered that in a way.
Yeah.
But basically, what it means is if something changes, either one of us needs to say that they've noticed.
Okay.
That's important because these ground rules that we've established will change through time. How they will change, I don't know.
Right.
And you don't know.
No.
But they might well do. Okay.
Yes.
So both of us need to notice when they change and say something.
Right. Okay.
Having said that, every third session, I will do a formal review with you of our ground rules.
Okay. So we can pick up if anything has changed.
Yes.
Along the way. Okay.
But if something happens along the way, then both of us have a responsibility to notice.
Okay.
And that's because there is lots of research which shows that these sorts of conversations work best when we give each other honest feedback about what's going on in the dynamics between us.
Okay.
And these ground rules are the kind of baseline of our understanding of what's going to go on between us.
Yeah, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. A framework that we can build on.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else before we get going?
I think that's all clear.
Okay.
Fantastic, thank you.
So there's our ground rules. Would you like to summarise where you think we are?
Okay, so session 1, we have discussed confidentiality, and through discussion we've decided that for the purpose of our conversation, we'd like it to be confidential, but you work for a governing body where it may mean that if something needs to be referred on to somebody or a discussion needs to be had with a third party or whatever, you have a duty of care to do that, a duty of care to myself, yourself, and your governing body. We've decided for now we're going to meet on a formal basis just because it works better with my diary. We're going to meet, we're both going to book out 2 hours. We might not need that 2 hours, and we're going to meet here in your office every couple of weeks. Every third week we'll have a review and see if any of our situations have changed or our relationship has moved in a different direction. And we might end up meeting on a slightly informal, less formal basis. If we need to communicate with each other, we're going to do it via email. If I'd like to talk to you in between sessions, I'll do that via email. I'm going to make notes while we talk because I think it's helpful for me. I like to see things written down, and it helps me remember what we've discussed. You don't take notes because you listen. Good. And I think that's about it.
Okay. What about the content of the conversation, open and closed area? Shall recall of that.
Yeah. So you discussed again that we could be very specific on the areas that I've come to speak to you about, which is my career and career development, or at the other end of the scale, which is kind of more open conversations to do with my personal life and things connected to that. I'm quite happy to start there. I think a lot of the things that I need to discuss come from there, which is linking to my career. But both of us will say, if I don't feel comfortable with the question that you asked, or you don't feel comfortable with an answer, we'll both say.
Okay. And giving and receiving feedback?
We have to both do it.
Right.
And the relationship works better if we're both happy to receive feedback all the time.
Okay. Fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Fine.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Good.